You want to adopt?
She's kidding. We wanted to see you.
This is a brief scope medium shot featuring 4 adults and a baby from Oppenheimer.
Have you eaten in the last hour?
No.
Lift your blouse, please.
This is a brief scope medium shot featuring 4 adults and a baby from Killers of the Flower Moon. There's a big difference between these two. Let's get to it. 5 directors, 5 unique ways to tell a story. Here I'll analyze the 5 films nominated for the Oscar of Best Achievement in Directing. And by analyze, I do mean analyze. No interpretations, no cultural context, no making of trivia, no nothing that might distract you from the image itself. For film direction must be judged solely for what exactly is on screen. There's sound as well, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Together, we'll go through each director's stylistic choices and look closely at individual shots. What is happening inside them, how they are composed, what they communicate. Do they succeed or do they fail? And do they look good? I'll begin with my favorite achievement of the bunch. By my man Marty, of course. From then on, it's in no particular order. I'll also point out what's my favorite shot in each film. We'll have a blast. Here we go.
I like all of them. Don't matter to me, I'm greedy.
Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon. Between these 5 films, there's no other director who better explores the numerous possibilities of cinematic style. Killers of the Flower Moon is a prime example in world building and composition. You'll find some of Marty's stylistic darlings, such as the use of multimedia that's appropriate to the time period. In this case, photos and newsreels. Plenty of newsreels. He also loves cutting to inserts, close-ups of objects and body parts, like the loot the thieves are stealing. The character of Henry Grammer is introduced through rodeo memorabilia. Molly recognizes her sister's body through a series of inserts.
Is this your sister, Anna Brown?
Scorsese also loves his energetic camera movements. He sometimes flies from a wide angle to a tighter one.
I love money! I love money! Turn that card over!
In a few scenes, the camera tends to circle around, panning to find different characters and what they're doing. There's a fun and more discreet use of panning when Kelsey gets arrested. We begin on the right and pan to follow him to the left as he mails a letter. A couple agents enter the frame from different directions and politely arrest him. We pan back with them to where the shot started, and like a punchline, it's now full of policemen. I also enjoy this scene when a desperate Ernest complains to King about being investigated.
I murdered King, they came to my house. They came to my house, private investigators.
It's shot in a creative use of the depth-flattening long lens, as if we're watching them in secret from afar. These scenes shot in one or few takes are the exception though. Like a modern director, Marty shoots a lot of angles. But unlike a modern director, he fills his frame with painterly perfection. The film is shot in scope, and boy does Marty know how to make full use of his wide screen. Every part of the frame should matter, right? Wait, why did we reframe to get this window? His wide shots are a mouth-watering lesson in cinematic composition. Not one scene goes by without at least one marvelously composed frame that artistically positions characters inside the location. It's all about making the actors, their heads and bodies, visible. Making the props and decorations visible. Making the whole damn place visible. And making sure each element is well spread out. Scope was invented to be spacious. This tableau approach is wonderful to frame ensembles on screen. Mind how it accentuates Ernest's loneliness when each counter shot is so clearly packed.
No, I suppose I didn't think that through too much. But
You have all the power to save his life.
He is saving you, dumb boy!
Don't forget depth. Strong foregrounds and backgrounds can enrich a great shot. Even Marty's murder scenes are, well, beautiful? Yvette foams at the mouth. Anyway, let me go through this quick but interesting use of blocking. 2 FBI agents on the right. The poison-happy doctors come out of the frame within the frame and the camera pans to the left to follow them. One of the doctors sits on his desk while the other one washes his hands further back. The FBI agents position themselves on the right. A rearrangement that's simple, but neat. Take the extraordinary wonder of Ernest getting arrested. The opening frame is already a masterpiece on its own. But that's not enough for Marty. The agents arrive and we close in on Ernest and circle around him. He stands up, circling around himself. Why not? The agents encircle him. We complete 360 degrees and follow as he tries to reach the exit. Agents in the foreground, background, left and right. They finally take him. Where to? To another perfectly composed frame, of course. And that one is not even my favorite shot of the movie. It's this one.
Stop, you thieving bastards!
We pull back to see the thieves escaping to the horizon, and on the right of the frame the shooter checks the damage he made to their friend. Killers of the Flower Moon has plenty more beauty, I just have no time to cover. Look at them. Disgusting. I drooled all over my keyboard. If you ask me, the artist who creates these images is the one who gets to decide what is cinema and what isn't. Take up these perfect frames, my friend. Take them up, savor and cherish. You'll miss them as this video goes on. So, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer. Our future winner. Okay, Oppenheimer has two aspect ratios. Scope being its 70mm 220:1 and the 143:1 of IMAX. But we don't have the full frame available, so let's pretend that it's 16:9, cropped, but pretty. While Marty embraces the scope frame in all its white glory, our friend Chris doesn't see the big deal. Like the broken clock, he has his rare moments of proper scope filling. But most of the time it's clear we're not getting as much as we should from the vertical elements. Or the left and right of the frame are wasted due to mediocre composition, center framing taken to extremes. See here how these 5 characters are all chaotically bundled up on the center, leaving all this empty space on the margins.
You want to adopt?
She's kidding. We wanted to see you.
Compare.
Have you eaten in the last hour?
No.
Lift your blouse, please.
Here actors don't get in each other's way. They're clearly visible and they're spread out, filling up the wide frame. When showing the location is important to Chris, we get the tall frame. But then characters need to talk, and since IMAX cameras are noisy, we switch to scope offhandedly used as a short and unimpressive necessary evil. IMAX is often saved for exteriors. Interiors are mostly shot with the wider, shorter ratio. When we switch ratios by changing settings, scenes, or cross-cutting, it works fine. But there are oh so many jarring switches within scenes that it's headache-inducing.
Welcome to Los Alamos. If there's a boys' school, we'll have to.
Robert? Robert.
Who'd want to justify their whole life?
I was lost and he was kind.
Please do not think this is one of those "it takes me out of the movie" type of criticisms. I am always out of every movie. I hope someday they make the full 143 frame available. The switches would jolt even more and we wouldn't get any extra information. Because Nolan never exploits distances in his frames, the way Marty does. But that 70mm texture still looks gorgeous. That's enough aspect ratio talk. If you'd like to hear more, I have a whole video on the subject. Chris can't frame. They're scared to position characters in depth, but he has no qualms for hacking his players to bits. This is made even worse by constant and useless camera movements that have no beginning or ending, that don't follow or reframe. They just remind us the camera is handheld and the framing doesn't matter. Besides cutting bodies, the film is cut too fast, much too fast. Nolan's frenetic rhythm even hurts some of his best shots. Some shots that actually give you more than one piece of information. Check this 4-second take here.
How'd I do?
Maybe a little too well, Robert.
Again.
How'd I do?
Maybe a little too well, Robert.
Again.
How'd I do?
Maybe a little too well, Robert.
Did you notice?
How'd I do?
Maybe a little too well, Robert.
Do you hate it as much as I do now? We're supposed to move our attention from Robert and his lawyer to straws in the back, and then back to the duo. It's one of the simplest ways of changing centers of attention within a shot. The rack focus. Focus here, focus there, focus back here. And he bungles it up. To start off, Cillian Murphy's head blocks our view of Downey Jr. That's ironically bad blocking. The lawyer turns to look at Strauss, but because we're waiting for the camera movement to unblock Downey Jr.'s face, we don't rack focus just yet. It's only when the lawyer is already bringing his head back that the focus is pulled to Strauss, who is still mostly blocked. It lasts about 1 second before we rack back to Oppenheimer. Amazing! Everything is wrong! Just keep the camera fixed in this position, or have Strauss sit on this guy's place. The actor's movement doesn't match the change of focus. The change of focus doesn't match the camera movement. The camera movement doesn't match the actor's movement. Everything's unsynchronized!
I hate it! I'm going to hell!
Here's a better moment.
Are we boring you, Edward?
A little bit, yes.
May I ask why?
Oppenheimer speaks to Teller, who's off screen, and instead of cutting, Chris tracks to the right to reveal our new character in the foreground. The angle is fixed, without that handheld jitter, and the camera movement is exact, fluid, and with purpose, a beginning and an ending. Why can't we have more of those? When Robert imagines himself naked in public, it happens through a slow track using Jason Clarke's head as a magician's handkerchief. A counter shot in the middle breaks the motion. It happens again in Strauss's hearing. He starts speaking off screen like Teller, and the camera tracks to the right to find him. But we cut to the Senate aide in the middle, splitting that movement between two shots. When it's revealed that Strauss was with Borden and Nichols, it looks like a camera movement will reveal Downey Jr.
Your conclusions will be, and they'll have to be answered.
But Chris changes his mind midway and simply cuts to a new angle. It's like he has actual difficulty in keeping his shots going. And that excessive use of music. The score is extraordinary, but the way Chris uses it makes every scene feel like a cog in a montage. He never wrote better dialogue in his life. I find it brilliant, but he'll be damned if you get to hear it.
I was asked by the Secretary of War what the views of scientists were. I gave him the views against and the views for.
The PhD report which you co-authored after the Soviet atomic test said a super bomb should never...
My favorite shot now.
Thanks for convening.
While walking, Strauss hands his hat to an assistant. Another one opens the door for him. He enters while pulling his color-contrasting scarf and the camera turns with him, reframing and stopping to show the set in a wide angle. So much personality from this character without the need of a close-up or even a visible face. This 9-second shot has precise movement, body language, the use of props, and respect for the set. I love it. Who directed? Basically, all Oppenheimer needed was to settle down. The camera, the pace. Just sit back, relax, breathe in, like, subscribe, breathe out, join me on Patreon. That would be perfect. Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall. This is a film about the indecipherable lines between truth and fiction. And for better or worse, the directing style is thoroughly appropriate. Justine makes use of visual ambiguity from beginning to end. Anatomy of a Fall is almost entirely shot like a fake documentary. There's repeated use of TV cameras and all their imperfections. When characters are evidently using cameras inside the scene, our primary point of view will be that very camera. But even when there are no cameras in the scene, the direction still follows the real-life coverage style. As if held by a documentarian or a reporter, the camera will try to keep up with speaking characters, then chase whichever new person calls its attention. And because the imaginary documentarian can't move freely around the set, they usually find themselves in unusual spots to film the scene, and to get closer they must resort to zooms. This leads to plenty of unfocused foregrounds. To make the protagonist's confession of an affair especially embarrassing, Justine makes her son's head cover half of the frame.
It was sexual. We slept together twice.
One could write a long and fascinating thesis about the correlation between style and content in Anatomy of a Fall. But, at the end of the day, the film looks like shit. No, I don't care how intentional it is. Wanting to look bad doesn't make you look less bad. The desire to imitate documentaries generates all the problems of one. Shots are simply put, ugly. Poorly lighted, uncoordinated, and with that goddamn wobbly tremor. A couple times the cameraman hides behind the prosecutor, allowing his robe to cover most of the frame and part of Sandra.
Very different with it. And sometimes, yes, when we argued, it came out because...
When she decides to change languages, the camera wobbles to find the translator.
It's too complicated. Can I change the language, please? Merci.
In this moment, the prosecutor exits the frame, leaving us with an unfocused nothing. The documentarian wakes up and goes, "Oh right, I better film, Daniel." Check this abomination of an angle here. The direction is a bunch of well-justified uses of low production quality. Even the family photos are ugly, and they made a poster out of it. Who would want to watch that? Here's my favorite shot in the movie. We see a medium close-up of Daniel from the left as the lawyer finishes his cross-examination. The prosecutor asks a question and we circle to the right with the boy's attention. The lawyer speaks again and we circle back to the left with Daniel's head. As the men contradict each other, we ping-pong from one side to the other, following Daniel's divided attention. Because he's blind, we never see the speakers, but follow the direction of the sound just like he does. When he finds his father's body, it's also an interesting shot. The corpse isn't framed as Daniel approaches. He cannot see it, so we can't see it either. It's the dog that brings the camera to it, as it brings Daniel. Oh, and the dog gets Steadicam treatment for a couple shots. Lucky dog. Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things. Obviously, the insane vision that creates this film is in full display through the peculiar sets and costumes. The camera also pulls off some tricks to make this strange world even stranger. There's this 4mm lens they use to create a circular vignette inside the screen. Yorgos is also in love with his fisheye lenses, which distort the already distorted sets. When the camera moves in a fisheye shot, then the distortion double distorts the distorted sets we already distorted. Lots of zooms. The film zooms so much it sometimes looks like its own Balenciaga spoof. Sometimes both shot and counter shot feature zooms. One of the best uses of zooms is when Bella plays with the apple and we zoom in on her face. After a couple close-ups she's finished and we zoom out just as Prim arrives. And that's about it. Everything in Yorgos Lanthimos' direction amounts to what Mo would call POMO.
Yeah, alright, weird for the sake of weird.
A weird world shot in a weird way. Clearly, we follow Bella's point of view. When she begins exploring, her black and white world gains vibrant colors. You'd expect the vignettes and fisheyes to gradually disappear or change in some way as the protagonist changes, but that doesn't happen. The film's style is exactly the same from beginning to end. The camera circles around Alfie's table just as it does God's table, or this tiny table here. And despite all the inventiveness of the movie's universe, this is not rich world building. We have a world, but we don't have a living world. Compare anything that happens anywhere in Poor Things to the street race scene in Killers of the Flower Moon, or Ernest arriving at the train station. Marty peoples his world, which is based on real life, with non-stop bustle. His extras fight, they cross close to the camera, they smoke, they do things. Simply put, they live. Yorgos has a never-before-seen madcap surreal world to play with and chooses to merely idle by. Nothing interesting happens besides an extra's hair briefly catching fire.
That woman's on fire, look.
For all its visual excess, the world of Poor Things is peopled by lazy AI who pass by and nothing more. It's very much a waste of a perfect playground. Everything can happen, nothing does. Could the camera step a bit to the right, please? Just a bit. The framing's off. My favorite shot? Of course there's a zoom.
What? You quit? No.
Cucumber at me.
Bella!
Bella?
The zoom serves two functions. It emphasizes Max's reaction, and it censors Bella's action. Good enough. You know what? Scratch that. My favorite shot's this one. Bella looks at her scar with two mirrors. An unusual image and an effective use of rack focus. Extremely cinematic and discreet. Truly terrific. Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. My second favorite direction among the nominees, by far. This is a case of a creative director stratospherically elevating his screenplay to astoundingly surprising heights. The Zone of Interest is cinema. Cinema and nothing else. Not much of a story, but what a telling. Jonathan uses his camera and his cuts to sculpt this full and compact universe. This is a three-dimensional universe with its very specific routine, and through careful repetition and calculated staging, the audience internalizes it so perfectly that it's getting too vague. Let me give you some examples. Here's the first scene in the backyard. Each new shot shows familiar portions of the set from different angles, and wide enough so you can take in proportions and distances between all elements. We see the canoe from the front, from the left, and from the right. There is only one angle missing, right? When we finally see the canoe from the back, like a bleak punchline, that expected angle includes Auschwitz. We were given a pattern, and by following that pattern, the sinister side of this bucolic scene was revealed. And by side I mean just that. One of the four sides, geographically speaking. Similarly, here's Rudolph smoking outside. He decides to turn off the dripping shower. We see him and the pool far away from the left. As he approaches, we see them far away from the middle. By now we expect that the next cut will show them far away from the right. That's exactly what we get. And that inevitable angle happens to include Auschwitz, with smoke coming from a furnace. Here Hedwig is tending her garden from this angle. Now from this one. What will the third angle reveal? Well done, you learned the rules. This pool party moment is established by shooting from all four cardinal points. We open from the left, which shows the house. Now from the back, showing the train smoke in the background. Now from the front with those unavoidable roofs. Finally from the right, showing both Auschwitz and smoke. The Zone of Interest teaches you how to watch it. It creates patterns. You don't only know when it will cut, you know to what exact angle it will cut. Especially as characters move through rooms. Jonathan establishes specific angles inside the house and the fact that when a character enters a room, we cut to it. Here three women talk in the kitchen. The maid walks from the left doorway to the right doorway. We cut to the dining room's major angle, which conveniently shows the cupboard she interacts with on the right and Hedwig on her chair in the previous room. We can conveniently see her spying and getting some coffee. We cut to expected angles in the corridor and the backyard. She brings the boots through the same angles and leaves them by these doors that were always visible. We cut to a new room in an angle that shows exactly where she is. The next angle makes it obvious that Rudolph has been waiting for those boots. The camera is perfectly positioned. Every prop is perfectly positioned. Every actor, whether still or moving, is perfectly positioned. Mind this angle in Hedwig's many mirrored room. She's in the background to the left, and foreground to the right we have that stand. After she finds a lipstick in the fur coat, she makes sure to place it on that as yet unused part of the frame. We get this specific angle in the backyard several times. It changes once to include this new spot, where a prisoner cleans Rudolph's boots. Later, the women in the kitchen look through the window, and because of that angle we can now connect these two parts of the house. Repetition makes you completely understand the geography of this place. It's especially clear when Hedwig is looking for her mother and Rudolph is turning off lights. We just cut from one expected angle to another. Compare it to Killers of the Flower Moon, when an energetic tracking shot flies through Molly's house. It's the Zone of Interest's temperamental opposite. Glazer only moves his camera a grand total of 11 times, and apart from this shot behind the canoe and this car POV, they are all lateral tracking motions. There are also 7 shots filmed directly from above. Coincidentally, Killers has about the same number of shots from above. Don't think too much into it. Here's my favorite shot from the zone of interest. This Auschwitz revealing angle covered by the clothesline. An unusual use of aperture framing. The maid is framed on the right, while the working prisoners are framed on the left. Don't forget the planes framed on the top of the screen, and the driver waiting in the background. Several different moving parts in a single static shot. One simple everyday element added to an old angle splits the screen into 3 frames within the frame. Through wide angles, ordained editing, careful blocking and repetition of all the aforementioned, Jonathan Glazer maps out this house and its routine in the brain of the viewer. The narrative is 100% dependent on this intransigent visual style. The zone of interest will very likely enter movie history as one of the all-time great examples of parametric storytelling, alongside Vivre sa vie, Playtime and the works of Ozu. The world of film criticism today is far too obsessed with narratives and not enough with visuals. I hope that a video like this one can help you to truly see a film style when you watch it. I hope you won't say a director is good simply because the movie is good, or because it made you cry. I hope you'll say a director is good because of how the shots are framed, how the camera moves, how the actors interact, and all other details that exist on the screen and nowhere else. That is watching a movie. Thank you for watching.